matter what happens, with Yormark targeting the Four Corners schools, no matter how successful Yormark is in targeting the Four Corners schools, according to Jon Wilner of the Mercury News, Washington and Oregon are not the right fit to join the Big 12 Conference. They're going nowhere. Let's get into it. Episode 282 of College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. Let's not waste any more time. We're going to Jon Wilner's mailbag from yesterday. The next steps for Oregon and Washington. The Bay Area void, the Arizona's roll, the $40 million question, expansion options, and more. We do not go through the whole mailbag, so we provide a link in the description. You can read the whole thing. To Oregon, this was a question to Jon Wilner from Andrew Perez. Do Oregon and Washington need to give consideration to joining the Big 12? It has been well documented that both schools covet the Big 10, but the opportunity may not exist today, and they could always join at a later date if and when the opportunity arises. Jon Wilner, the hotline doesn't foresee the Pacific Northwest powers ever joining the Big 12, no matter how dire the Pac-12 situation becomes. Even, for example, the Arizona schools in Utah were to follow the Colorado's lead and flee the conference. It works both ways. The Big 12 isn't a good fit for them, and they aren't good fits for the Big 12. The reasons are rooted in the financial, logistical, and competitive aspects of realignment and conference structure. First, from the Big 12 side, adding Washington and Oregon to a group of newcomers that would include the Four Corners schools would create an 18-team conference, bigger than the Big 10, the SEC, and frankly, too big to function effectively. There are things here that Jon Wilner says that we agree with at Peek Around the Corner and things that we disagree with, and we're going to be pointing them out throughout the article. This is something that we disagree. The number 18 is not too big for a conference to function effectively. There's no magic number. There's no number that's effectively too high. Well, at least it isn't the number 18. There are going to be conferences in the future that go blow by the number 18. So we disagree with that paragraph. Back to the article. To make it work, the Big 12 would need a Western division, similar to what has been proposed for the Big 10. But why would the network partners, ESPN and Fox, want a Western division that did not include a presence in California? They wouldn't. That's a very good point. What Jon Wilner is trying to say is he doesn't believe the Big 12, the networks would back the Big 12 of grabbing all those 6 schools when you're still not in the state of California. That's a very good point, a good point to think about. There's also the competitive issue. Would the likes of Oklahoma State and Baylor welcome 2 heavyweight football programs that would make playoff access exponentially more difficult for the existing Big 12 members? From the perspective of the 2 schools, there are innumerable reasons to decline the Big 12 option. The first, of course, is geography. Can you imagine Washington sending its athletes in all sports to Ames, Orlando, Cincinnati, and Lubbock on a weekly basis? Sure, the Huskies would agree to compete on the Big 10 campuses if the offer presented itself, but that scenario likely would include transformative revenue and alignment with comparable academic institutions. In the Big 12 scenario, Washington's non-revenue sports would be schlepping to and from the Central Time Zone for essentially the same amount of money that they would get in the Pac-12. The same amount of money they would get in the Pac-12. Pac-12 has not been able to present a media deal to Washington and Oregon. I think we have to quit thinking about Pac-12 having an equal, comparable media package to the Big 12. Those days should be long gone. I'm not sure why Wilner keeps going back to that. Back to the article. And even if the revenue isn't fully comparable, the travel isn't worthwhile. Now that is a good point to make. The same issues exist for the Ducks. Yes, USC and UCLA are doing something similar in the Big Ten, but again, they are getting paid well for it. The competitive issues exist for Oregon to even a greater extent, perhaps, than it does for the Huskies. Why would a football program that has designs in the playoff and a national title for Phil Knight want to participate in an 18-team league? Again, we disagree here at Peek Around the Corner with Jon Wilner. He's brought this point up again over and over again. We don't even know what the playoff axis is going to be in 2026 and beyond. There might not be any auto bids. The committee might look at strength of schedule, might give the Big Ten and the SEC, these large conferences, more at-large bursts. Who knows if the SEC and the Big Ten even cut themselves off from the rest of FBS football. We don't know. Maybe the Big 12, SEC, and the Big Ten cut themselves off from the rest of FBS football. We don't know what the future is going to look like from 2026 and beyond. Oregon and Washington, they're not looking at, when it comes to realignment, what is the easiest right now for us to get to the playoffs. What those two universities, just like all other universities, are looking at is what is the best opportunity for visibility, growth, revenue for our athletic department, our front porch of our university, and our student athletes, because they're going to be compensated in many more ways going into the future. So again, we strongly disagree with this sentiment that Oregon and Washington are looking at how is it best for us to get into the playoffs here in 2024, 2025. We don't think that is playing any factor at all in their decision making. Back to the article, all of which is to say we don't envision the Huskies and Ducks participating in the Big 12 ever. If the Pac-12 loses the Four Corners schools, leaving just the Pacific Northwest Quartet and the Bay Area teams, two scenarios would exist. One, the conference reforms by adding the likes of Boise State and San Diego State to create a league of 8 or 10 teams. Number two, the Huskies, Ducks, and perhaps Cal and Stanford agree to join the Big Ten, likely for reduced revenue shares, thus expediting the creation of the Big Ten's 8-team Western Division with the Los Angeles schools. The latter scenario feels more plausible, and yet at the same time, not at all that plausible. The next question to Jon Wilner. Was it the 10 university presidents of the Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff who decided to demand north of $40 million per school and perhaps as much as $50 million during the contract negotiations with ESPN last fall? If the believable rumors are true, this was asked by JLix0077. Jon Wilner answers, Kliavkoff and his media advisor, Doug Perlman, are in charge of the negotiations. They determined whatever price point was placed on the negotiation table last fall. And yes, we have been told the starting number was in the $40 million vicinity. What we don't know is the role UCLA played in the process. Did the conference seek something on the high end of $40 million only in the event the Bruins were forced to reverse course? Or was that figure the target even without the Bruins? Either way, Kliavkoff's strategy was to draft off the Big Ten's negotiated figure of more than $60 million per school. Our sources in the media industry were skeptical of the approach and suggested ESPN would be as well. However, it's difficult to know what price point would have been acceptable to Oregon and Washington, for instance. That's a good point by Jon Wilner. Then the Big 12. This is the PATC money shot of the article. Some people still don't get what Yormark did, what he successfully accomplished. Then the Big 12, desperate for security, renewed its agreement with ESPN and Fox at $31.7 million per school per year. Suddenly, a floor was set for the Pac-12. The Big 12 wisely reached out for security, went in front of the Pac-12, grabbed the deal before the Pac-12 And that day on October 30th, 2022, here peek around the corner, we reported to you all that that was a huge day for the Big 12 and a very bad day for the Pac-12. It did not take us until July 29th, 2023 to figure this out. The Big 12 desperate for security? Okay, you can use the word desperate. But you also have to use the word they wisely reached out for security and grabbed it. Securing the Big 12 institutions, their future in being in the room in 2026 to decide the future of college football and college athletics. Back to the article. Will Kliavkoff secure evaluation that places the Pac-12 on the same level? We should know soon enough. Jeez. He needs to lock in a proposal in the next few weeks. He needed to lock in a proposal a couple months ago. He needed to lock in a proposal when DeStefano, the Colorado chancellor, asked for clarity in numbers. They're about to lose Arizona. That gets to our next question. Which is the next school to leave the Pac-12? Arizona, Oregon, or Washington? Asked by Lewis. And I think that's our Lewis, the legendary caller in the PATC community. The answer, Arizona is clearly the Big 12's next target. The Wildcats fit geographically and have basketball brand. The Big 12 covets its 14th member. Connecticut is also under consideration. Wildcats fit everywhere. When it comes to geography, when it comes to the huge basketball brand that fits in with Yormark's vision. Commissioner Brett Yormark's strategy has been obvious and smart since last fall. Secure a media deal, then pursue the most receptive Pac-12 school, Colorado, and attempt to destabilize the league and start a chain reaction. Commissioner Brett Yormark's strategy has been obvious and smart since last fall. Not obvious to everyone. Definitely not obvious to everyone. Most of the West Coast writers, the Pac-12, they didn't even see it coming. They didn't even know about the meeting between the Colorado and the Big 12 in the first week of May. This was not obvious to everybody what Yormark was doing. We tried to report to everybody that Colorado had been in the center of the stage for months. Definitely not obvious to everybody. Perhaps the reaction never materializes. Maybe it only extends to Arizona, or maybe it leads to the Wildcats, Sun Devils, and Utes, all even for the Big 12. The saga isn't over, but to this point, Yormark has completely outmaneuvered Kliavkoff. And again, it did not take us to July 29th to figure that out. As it relates to a potential Arizona defection, would the fact that Arizona and Arizona State share a board of regents potentially complicate any decision to change conferences? Jon Wilner. This is one of the most significant questions hanging over the fate of the conference. To what extent are the Arizona schools tied together in conference affiliation? The University of California Regents didn't insist that Cal and UCLA remain together, which could provide a model for the governing board in the Grand Canyon State. We don't believe, we don't believe the two Arizona schools are tied together. They can leave separately. Back to the article. We claim no insight on this matter, save for what Arizona President Robert Robbins said during a college athletics forum in June. We don't have to do the same thing. But Arizona State President Michael Crow and I are very, very tight. I think it'd be unlikely that we'd split up. Right now, with 10 schools, we control a very nice 20% of solidarity. The final question. With Colorado's departure, do you see the Pac-12 adding 3 schools? The bold play at this point would be to add multiple schools at reduced revenue shares. Some combination of San Diego State, SMU, and Gonzaga, for instance. But anyone expecting bold action from the Pac-12 presidents is setting themselves up for disappointment. Jon Wilner went there. He took a shot at the Pac-12 leadership. The group talks about a strategic approach that anticipates where the puck is going. In reality, it's unable to see the puck until the conference gets whacked in the mouth. The group talks about a strategic approach that anticipates where the puck is going. That's our line here at Peek Around the Corner. You skate where the puck is going to. The Pac-12 has not come close to doing any of that. Do you feel that you've been misled by your sources inside the Pac-12? Not at all. Here's the reason. To a significant extent, our coverage of the media rights process has leaned into 1. Sources in the sports media industry who are unaffiliated with the conference, and number 2, on the record comments by the university presidents. I think the presidents have been misled by the Pac-12 leadership. Therefore, the university presidents have been given some not accurate information to certain reporters out on the West Coast. There are big reasons why they got it so wrong out there in the West Coast, and why others got it wrong throughout the country. Their sources didn't have good information. We were told by our own Arizona State Money Perch that the Pac-12 had no real numbers. Starting on January 31st all the way up until now, they still haven't received real numbers. While other people were reporting real numbers, they had not gotten real numbers presented in the front of the Pac-12 presidents. And it's still true today as we sit here on July 30th, 2023. President of Arizona, Bobby Robbins, needs to see a real deal in front of him right now. It has to happen right now. And if it doesn't, Arizona is school number 14 of the Big 12. And then Arizona State, all eyes will be on Arizona State and Utah. Put down your comments. Put down your comments and thoughts in the comment section below the video. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how soon Arizona will make their decision. Let me know if the Pac-12, if you think the Pac-12 can still pull the rabbit out of the old hat and pull out a miracle, thread the needle, and Kliakov can actually get a deal in front of those Pac-12 presidents in which the last 9 remaining presidents can actually sign on the dotted line. Let me know. Stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner as we continue to follow the Pac-12 saga. I think there's more trouble ahead, more realignment coming up. Arizona, they have a table reserved, number 14, and I think Robert Robbins is about to take a seat at that table and order a dinner inside the truck stop diner. Stick with us here. Until next time. From all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.